Hey, I would like to call the July 5th meeting of the Public Works Committee of the Common Council to order. It is 7:17. We are a bit late tonight due to some technical difficulties with Zoom, but we've got that taken care of. The public has access and we are up and running. First order of business is roll call tonight. We have Mr. Livingston, Tom Livingston, Dominique Johnson, Nora Nojelski-Eichner, and Darlene Young. Lisa Shanahan is unable to be with us tonight, and myself, of course, Barbara Smith. We'll just, let's see if we have, no, we have no attendees. I'm just gonna just move things out of order a little bit just to make sure that the public has the opportunity to log on. So if we could just go to new business, item 1 is approve the minutes of the Public Works Committee meeting of Tuesday, January 7th, 2022. Would someone like to move that, please? Mr. Livingston moves the minutes. Does anyone have any changes, corrections, deletions? Okay, all in favor of the minutes, please raise your hand. Okay, that's unanimous.
Sorry, Madam Chair, I need to abstain.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, one abstention. Okay, one abstention.
Thank you.
So that's,
Actually, I believe I might have to as
yes,
well.
yes, right. Okay,
Sorry. Thank you, Nora.
right.
I just blanked.
okay. So we have 3 in favor, 2 abstentions. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, one abstention. Okay, one abstention. Actually, 2 abstentions. Ms. Nojelski-Eichner and Ms. Johnson both need to abstain. Okay, all right. Do we have anyone for public comment? Mr. Manzi?
I do not see anyone. I'm just going to go in on my cell phone and try to link, make sure people can get in.
Okay. All right, well, let's, I think that we can move on to the next item, and then if someone comes on for public comment, we'll just let them, you know, given we have some technical difficulties tonight, we'll just let them come in. So the first item number 2, I'm going to actually read numbers 2 and 3 together. This is an honorary naming. So item 2, acknowledge the receipt of the request for the honorary naming of Trinity Place to Bishop Joseph D. Clemens Sr. Drive. And 3, schedule a public hearing for the honorary naming of Trinity Place to Bishop Joseph D. Clemens Drive. The public hearing shall be conducted in order to hear all parties interested in commenting on the proposed honorary street naming and to take such action on said naming that the committee may deem advisable. The public hearing is scheduled for Tuesday, August 2nd, 2022 at 7 p.m. by way of video conference and teleconference. Will someone move those items, please? Ms. Young moves items 2 and 3. So what we have is a request to name an honorary naming of Trinity Place. Reverend Clemens has been, or Bishop Clemens rather, has been a very involved member of our community. His wife is commissioner for the Norwalk Police Department. And so essentially what we're doing tonight is just acknowledging receipt for the request and scheduling the public hearing. Anthony, did you want to add anything?
Yes, Madam Chair, and committee, good evening. The only thing I'd like to add is that this individual is still living amongst us. So the regulations and the city ordinance for living individuals pertaining to honorary street naming, it requires approval from the Common Council, but it has to be a supermajority +1. So 11 out of the 15 votes are required if the committee so chooses to recommend approval and forward this to the full Common Council. 11 votes would be needed.
Mr. Livingston.
Yeah, thank you. Are we talking, we're not talking about changing the name as much as putting up one of the honorary plaques, right? On the honorary
Correct. The
sign,
blue,
right?
Councilman, the blue and white plaques.
Right, like we've done elsewhere. Okay.
Correct.
The individual seemed really impressive. It's just, my only question is, it just seems a little, we don't normally do it for living people, but it's said very impressive. So.
So Madam Chair, you would, as previously done, you would just acknowledge receipt of the application, which the department did, and now to the committee, and then schedule the public hearing, and at which point we're also gonna attempt to continue contacting representatives who submitted the initial request to speak on behalf, if not the individual themselves, and hopefully those individual or designees can attend at the public hearing.
Absolutely. Okay, any questions from the committee? Okay, Ms. Young.
Just a comment. I'm just really glad that we are moving forward with this and thank whoever brought this forward. I had the pleasure of meeting Reverend, I think back then, was he Reverend? He wasn't the Bishop, Clemens and his wife. And as I was dipping my toe into politics. And so Reverend Clemens was one of the first people I met, and it's a well-deserved acknowledgement and honor. So thank you to Anthony and to this committee for moving this forward.
Okay, anything else? Okay, I will call for a vote. All in favor? Okay, those items 2 and 3 pass unanimously. All right, item 4, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute an agreement with M&J Engineering PC to provide construction administration and inspection services for TMP Phase 4 traffic signal upgrade and DMS installation project number 102-360 for an amount not to exceed $246,650, account noted. Will someone move that, please? Ms. Young? This is there's outside staffing needed on this for this construction project, or construction firm rather. Did we get someone here from TM?
No, but I think Mike just came in. Actually, I was able to forward his link, so Mike is on.
Great, okay.
Perfect timing, Mike.
Just made it. Yes, basically, we're going to be advertising a construction project for a traffic signal upgrade, and we're short on project inspectors, and they're kind of required by the federal grant. So we issued an advertisement, and we interviewed 3 companies, and this company came back with the lowest price, and they're also the best qualified firm, we feel.
Ms. Young has a question?
So I have a question. Are you all able to see, or do you have cameras in the area where some of those new traffic signals are located?
The project that we're doing now does have some cameras. Yes, it does have cameras, and it will continue to have cameras.
And is there, can I ask another, so since there are there any ideas or thoughts about adding cameras in other high traffic areas where these signs are? Because are you able to capture cars as they go through the yellow light? Like, are there cameras that show you exactly what's happening with some of those new signal installation areas?
I mean, we do have cameras, but we don't record them for several reasons. First, the state doesn't allow it yet, and then you have to also have the data backup and storage and all those requirements.
And I only mention that because in front of Grace Baptist, it's still a concern. And I mean, I find myself stopping, you know, somebody has to stop, and then that eventually gets the person on the other side to stop, but they're not stopping and at the right time, allowing people to cross that street. It just, so I'm just wondering, it's an issue.
Yeah, the one good thing about this project is that it will replace that RRFB with a traffic signal again. So
Okay, Ms. Nadjelski Eichner.
Thank you. I just have a procedural question, and I don't mean to be difficult, but we don't have any information here about the bids. I find that normally when we're being given a recommendation for a contractor, there's at least a little bit of additional information provided about the bids, and here we just have a note that each firm was evaluated and it was found to be the best. So I'm just wondering if this is sufficient information for us to evaluate the bid decision, or if there is a reason that we haven't been provided a little more backup on that decision.
Mike, I can just say also one thing. Usually this is probably was an RFP, is a request for proposal instead of a bid.
Okay.
Sometimes there is not as many proposals that come back. It can be only one. And usually we just present, this is in general, I'm not saying specific about this item, but usually we are only allowed to bring in front of you after we get the blessing from the purchasing agent. So the procurement process was effective, and then we're able to move this in front of you guys.
This is not uncommon.
Okay, it seems a little short on information to me for us to be able to be passing on whether this is the right amount of money to be putting forward on this proposal. And again, it's not casting any doubt on the decision. I just was a little surprised. I feel like we get more backup often for things that are much lower amounts of money than this. So I just was checking.
I'm curious, I'm not being argumentative, but I just wonder, I mean, besides the price, and that's the main factor here, we're told this is the lowest price bid, right?
We did the two-step process, Mr. Livingston. It was we advertised for a price, but it was also based on a point system through the purchasing department. So after we received the prices, we also did an interview. So in addition to being the lowest bidding firm, they were also highest scoring firm, which we'd be happy to provide that information, additional backup if.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I said, it's not that I don't.
I just want to
striking.
share one thing.
No.
I'm sorry, Mike, but we never shared the grading points. And I have a lot of concern on sharing that. I know Mike just offered, but I'm sorry. I think it's not fair for the other companies. So again, usually there is, when it's an RFP that we request for proposal and we grade them, how we grade them is open to the proposal. So we tell what is the criteria that we're going to be evaluating. A committee is put together and to evaluate that, and then we give grades. Those kind of grades, and then the selection process is done with the purchasing agent. Usually we do not share the grades with the other companies. We don't think that is fair, because at the same time, we may not get some of these other companies back. And we don't want that to happen, because maybe the company A is perfect for this type of project, but B came very, very close, but wasn't the right candidate for that job. But we want to still to come back in our next proposal. And if they see that some people grade lower, they may not come. So that's why we never share the grades. And usually we just go, you're going to see that on a different item that we have, that we did a very similar process. The memo will just address that there was a committee that evaluate, and that's what we're presenting in front. So I don't want to share any of the grading and the process. It's the staff is recommending what we believe that we're following the procurement process that should be awarded to a certain contract or a consultant.
Okay, and I do understand the concerns about sharing sort of details of the bids, but I guess, and again, I'm thinking about, last month for the Goose proposal that we got from Parks and Recs. I think we had like 35 pages of information about that bid for $30,000. And then on a bid for $260,000, we literally get 2 paragraphs stating that this is the recommendation. So it just strikes me as a little bit, I just feel like I'm lacking information here to evaluate the use of the public funds. And I totally get your concerns about the RFP. And if this is the process that the city has set up, and we're confident that the procurement agent is a sufficient second set of eyes, et cetera. But if the role of this committee is oversight on funding, it's just a little, the disconnect between what we see on some projects and not on others was just jumped out to me, probably because I spent a great deal of time last week flipping through 35 pages on the Goose application. So that's why I'm sort of just trying to sort out why we're getting different amounts of detail here that don't seem proportionate necessarily to the money involved.
Understood. We're gonna make sure that we get a better memo from even from items that is not directly from engineer. If some other departments use DPW for other approvals, we'll make sure that we have some type of standard that we're gonna require them to do. The only thing that I said that I prefer not to share is the grading.
And I
We
totally
can say
understand that.
That's the only thing that I have my concerns on sharing.
I totally understand that. And I think, certainly, and I don't want to make extra work, but, some kind of narrative that provides us with a little additional detail as to why they're the preferred vendor, what the process was, what the criteria of evaluation were, just something so that we really understand, again, in our roles of making sure that this is the right funding source. I mean, what do we do here other than protect and make sure, and it's also for your all protection, right? It makes sure that the bids are, process is clean and all the above. So that would just be a request, and again, Barbara, I sort of defer to you. I know you've managed this before, but it would be helpful to have a little more.
Thank you, Nora. I mean, having a new member of the committee with the new eyes, always something, to, bring attention to. Yeah, this has been, fairly common practice. The funds are approved, in the capital budget, the operating budget, and, we trust the RFP process that the city has established, but it couldn't hurt to just, add a little more information, perhaps, just a little grid with the bids, and the cost, so we can continue working on that.
Madam Chair, that's noted, and we'll work with CMP to provide a little bit more of a more comprehensive memo. But I agree with Vanessa about not sharing the scores, but we can certainly revisit it with Mr. Yosak and Mr. Travers and provide additional context in the memo moving forward.
Thank you, much appreciated.
Oh, that was a lot of information on the Goose.
There's a lot of information, and the thing is, it was fascinating.
and
I learned a
was-
lot about geese and how that all process works and the
Yeah,
various criteria that were being used to decide which geese vendor. It was fascinating.
Great.
I agree with you, though. It was a lot of information and then not enough, but who knew there was
That
so
may
much
have,
about
that may have
these,
been
but I thought-
overkill on the geese. I'm not
Right.
saying we need
Right.
that.
Right. We got to strike a balance. So thank you.
Okay, all right, so anything else on that item? All right, so I will call for a vote. All in favor? All right, that carries unanimously. All right, moving on to item 4, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute the First Amendment to the agreement between the City of Norwalk and Stantec Consulting Services, Inc. for construction inspection services for State Project 102-350 Norwalk River Valley Trail Phase 2 for an amount not to exceed $5,500. Account noted. Do I have a motion? Ms. Johnson moves that. And this is a design change regarding the boardwalk layout. So someone can then talk about that for us.
I could talk about that, Madam Chairman. This is
Okay.
Mike
Thanks, Mike.
Yosak.
Yep.
Basically, as you probably have noticed, there's been some delays in the trail project because we found some underground utilities that weren't mapped very well. So we had to make some adjustments. As a result of those adjustments, we need to redo the pile design, which has now led into some concerns with the structures of the boardwalk. So we would need to have Stantec engineers take a look at that to examine the bracing, so all the connections and everything are in the right place. So that's basically the reason for this change order or amendment to their contract, rather.
Mr. Livingston?
Yeah, this is going to sound contrary to what was just said, but are we really, and I understand we have to do it, but we really are going to the council for $5,500 on a change in an existing project? I mean, that just seems like the level is so low.
Well,
Exact
again,
opposite. You're right, Tom.
what happened is that when it's a construction project, we build up some contingency on the construction portion of it. When is a consultant fee that is designed, usually we authorize on that value. We don't add contingency because supposedly they should kind of not exceed that. We have already kind of a price and we do on that value. Unless something that is totally different that they need to go back and redesign is when we have to go back. And I agree, it's a very small value, but unfortunately we do not have the approval for that. And they have.
I guess it's more an observation.
I know.
About process.
I'm with you, Tom.
I know, I'm
believe me.
sure you are. And the process, there seems to be something wrong with the process with that, but nothing, no criticism intended. I just think it just struck me.
Yeah, I think that eventually, you know, we should sit down and look at some of the purchasing, the procurement requirements and see if there is a little bit of flexibility in a couple of things,
Yeah.
because like it's the same as the technical corrections that we
Right.
come back in front of you, just shred an account is exactly the same thing.
Thanks.
Tom, can we put this in the bucket of charter commit revision?
It actually is already there.
Excellent.
It's a
Yeah,
bit-
we
it's a-
talked
it's-
about these.
We
kinds of
appreciate it.
Great. Okay, any other questions or comments on that? Yeah, it's a lot to fix, that charter. Anyway, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Okay, again, this passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay, on to item 6. Authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to I have to amend the language here. So I'm going to move it with just some minor changes. So we'll move it as amended. Authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute an on-call, we're adding on-call agreement between the city of Norwalk and Olmsted Tree and Shrub Care LLC and Minutemen Land Services LLC for the supply and planting of trees and shrubs, period. Task orders not to exceed $700,000 in the aggregate between the two companies, accounts noted. So would someone move the item as amended? Ms. Nadjelski Eichner moves that. Yeah, so it's just the two little changes, adding on-call and a period at the end of shrubs and task orders not to exceed. And so this is ARPA funds and needs to be handled very carefully. RFP's been issued. It's already been through the Finance Committee, but let's get a little more information. Anthony?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So as you noted, the two accounts are ARPA funding, which has gone before the Finance Committee, and that's indicative. If you look at the last few digits of the account, you'll see APW08. That just means ARPA Public Works, and then you'll see EC, and that's ARPA Economic Development. So the amount of ARPA funds allocated for tree planting to DPW was approximately $200,000, and economic development was also given approximately $500,000. So that's why the contract that you see here between the two different companies total $700,000. So another stipulation for the ARPA funding is that money needs to be expended by August of 2024. With our aggressive tree planting program throughout citywide corridors, we felt it was a little bit more versatile to have two companies in the event, because Olmsted is a very large company. We worked with them before. And the other Minutemen Land Services, they're a smaller company, both very qualified, but our intention was, while we have the bigger company working, if we need the smaller company to backfill or overlap, whether it's to meet a deadline or just plant more trees, become aggressive, or if Olmsted has other work for whatever reason, the redundancy is there with Minutemen. They're both very good companies, but again, Minutemen is just a smaller outfit and a smaller firm. We do not have a plan delineated yet. This was actually discussed weeks ago between DPW, Economic Development, the Law Department, and the Purchasing Department. We have an existing contract right now, we being DPW, with Olmsted Tree and Shrub Care, but the limit of that contract is $135,000. So it would not be good procurement policy and not within the guidelines to basically artificially inflate that contract from $135,000 to almost 4 or 5 times the value to $700,000. So myself, the city engineer, and others work together to issue basically another contract, another contract with two firms who are able to perform the work. And again, we don't have the plan and the scope defined yet. But we will start developing that in the next few months, and that'll be a group effort between DPW engineering, operations, TMP, and other nonprofit and conservation groups as well. Vanessa, if there's anything I missed or that you feel should be added to that, please feel free to jump in.
No, I think that covers, unless if somebody has any specific questions.
Go ahead, Mr. Livingston.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand, I'm sorry, this exactly what we're approving then. I mean, it's a lot of money and
So, Mr. Livingston, what happened is that pretty much usually for our tree budget in general, we request that money through capital. Because we have some ARPA money, we haven't done any requests through our capital budget, and the money that we received, not only public works, but also economic development, it's as ARPA money. So what we did is we combined the pile of those two monies. That money, although it seems a lot, it is two huge departments, tree money, plus we have up to the end of June 24,
24, yep.
to spend that money. So we have quite of a long period that will be covering the trees and all the studies that will be required related to the trees and all that.
I guess, I'm sorry, Vanessa, I'm sorry. I'm just looking at this and I guess I'll go back to, we're all over this tonight, but in terms of the RFP, I mean, what did we ask for? I mean, this is something that's near and dear to my
So what
heart.
we
as a
did
full
is,
council.
was the same RFP that we put it out for a regular bid. So it was actually like kind of a bid that we put it out. What we did is we prepare a list of all the trees that we want with a 2-year warranty. They have to plant, they need to water. So we put all the specifics there. So this RFP really mimicked the same bid that we put out every year for our tree planting. So we had just written that one. You guys approve our yearly contract probably early this year. Unfortunately, we could not make an amendment to that one due to the value of it. We didn't thought that would be fair to add an amendment to a contract that has $130,000 originally, and then we make another amendment to 700. So after discussing internally with legal, purchasing agent, and both departments, we thought that would be fair that we put the bid out again. And that's what we did. We put a bid out again, and pretty much the prices were very similar. So, and again, Olmsted actually kept the same prices that they bid on a few months ago, 6-7 months ago. But also, the only thing that is different on this one, and I think that's where it's getting a little bit tricky, is that the committee that interviewed the companies, because the price was very, very similar, so was not, because it's very hard for us to tell you who is the lowest bidder, because you may have a better price on a maple tree, but on a cherry tree, the other guy may have a little bit more, and we do not know which one we're going to buy. So that's why we go by unit price, and we kind of do a couple of scenarios to figure it out how that price would play. And they were very similar. So what they did, we interviewed the two companies. We tried to figure it out how much of the staff they have availability, what kind of equipment they have. And after that interview that this committee put together with the purchasing agent, they felt that although the other company, the Minuteman, is a much smaller than Olmsted, they should also benefit from this contract. Doesn't mean that we're going to give $700,000 to both of them. It's just that the total amount that will be spent in the next 2 years, pretty much, it will be $700,000 and will be based on task orders. So let's say that I'm just going to use one example that we just did for the MLK beautification. We are planting about 85 trees there. So what will happen is that when we get this task order, we're going to send to both of them. This is the task order. We need this type of trees. Tell me when can you do it and how gonna do it. So they usually send it back, and then we issue the task order to one of them. So that's how it's gonna work. Sometimes one may be extremely busy, maybe the other cannot even find the type of tree that we're looking. So we have just a second one to be able to help us fulfill the contract.
So I guess, okay, just two things. One, a big concern for me and some others is that the watering is not done enough. I know they have a 2-year guarantee, but they replace the end, they don't have any obligation after that. So that's one issue. That's actually two issues. One is there's a concern about not enough watering being done in the current situation. The other is the guarantee doesn't help all that much because after the 2 years, they replace it and walk away, right?
Well, sometimes we have few trees that die right at the beginning.
No, I understand that. Okay, but
So there is the thing about the water, we can discuss this further. What happened is that some of the trees that are planting on private property, that is for beautification, there is an agreement with the private owner that accepted that tree to be planted to water. And that is one of the issues that we have been having. Now, if it is on the right of way, we usually water down. And we make sure that waters, and sometimes even if we feel that needs more water, if we're going through a big drought, we send our own trucks when needed. The
actually,
issue
Vanessa,
becomes on the
I'm
other
sorry.
one.
I'm going to cut you off, and I'm sorry about this. I'm tired, and I'll just be blunt about it. I'd like to see the RFP before I approve this, because I don't feel, I mean, what Nora said, I don't think I have any information on this, much less, I know it's similar to what we did before, and I'm willing to let it go to council to vote, but I really do want to see that RFP, because I've had concerns about some of the stuff that's been, not by any individual on this call, but just to make sure we're actually getting the best bang for a buck here. And I'm really concerned about the watering, and I'd like to see that covered in the contract. So I just want to see it. I want to see.
Just so you know, Tom, too, it is actually in the RFP that they have to water either with gator bags or with a watering truck for the 2 years. And during the time period, it's actually in the RFP that they have to submit a report to the tree advisory committee every month between May and November of what they watered and when, and they do it. It's part of the contract.
Okay, so that's the type of thing I'd like to see. So I'd like to see the RFP or whatever. I said I'll advance it to council, but I want to see it before I vote.
Thank you. But I just want to ask one thing. Is this now will be the new norm that we're going to have to share the RFPs all the time that we go for approval? Because we never did that. I have no problem with that. And sometimes we do not have. Then you guys, like on some of our RFPs is over 200 pages.
No,
So I just need to know how we're gonna move forward so I can have that information available for you. So would you like, because it is actually, it is on the website when we advertise on RFP. So anyone can go there and read all RFPs that are being published. I just want to know how is the best way for us to address your concerns so we can have things, all those answers for you in advance.
It's a great question. And I'm not trying to micromanage here. I'm really not. I just think, we talk about, I guess we need to sort of figure out what the right amount of information is. Others have thoughts, I'm sure. This one is just particularly near and dear to my heart, as I said. And we also have other RFPs going out for a tree planting plan, and I want to make sure it's all coordinated. A survey we're going to do with the RFP on the inventory, canopy study. Where does this fit in? Right? That's the type of thing I think I'd like to look at this holistically, but that doesn't answer your question, Vanessa. I'm going to let Darlene.
Well, let's hear some of the comments. Go ahead, Darlene.
So I agree with both Nora and Tom, and I think maybe just a summary. I don't think we all need to go through the entire, whatever many pages, but some sort of summary that gives us enough information so that we know exactly, the specifics of what we're voting on. And I know that's a lot of work, but I think just, and even with the, I know in some other packets, we get the bidders, right? We don't get the scoring, but we get all the information about a bidder, how much they bid, blah, blah, blah. I mean, all that stuff comes to us in different forms and in different committees, but I think certainly a summary, a detailed summary of what the RFP, what we are asking the people to respond to, even, right?
Yeah, that's a section, right? You just copy the section?
Right.
No,
And-
it did for us, it's much bigger, but we'll try to come, but that's why there is a memo. And I'll be honest, Paul wrote a much bigger memo. I cut it. The original one was much longer. And I asked him to cut a little bit. So he had a lot, but he had a 2-page and I make it just one, just to make it less confusing. But I, of course, was a wrong move on my end.
Well, just remember, we had 30 pages of goose information, goose cleanups.
It's all about the goose, huh?
I
Too much
promise you it won't
information.
happen again.
And I mean, can I just add there? I think there's two separate issues here. So one, Vanessa, I don't want to make you do more work. If you could just include the link to where the RFP is, then we can, so if our question is about the criteria, if you don't recreate, just give us the link. I'm happy to go and look at it. And so that I can see the criteria used and get a feel for the contract that way. So I think that's one set of questions. The second set of questions is just, look, I mean, I among other things, I think West Haven made all of us very cognizant of just how easy it is for funds to kind of go awry, right? And that really a lot of our responsibility as council members is also be providing protection for all of you, that, all of these sort of contracts are being reviewed. We know what we're voting on. And it's not any lack of sort of trust of you all, but it just, when you say, hey, we got all these bidders and you give me a name of a company I've never heard of and an amount, and you say, this is the right one, what possible criteria other than the fact that I trust you am I working on to say that, yes, this is a responsible use of our funding? And I think, as Darlene mentioned, maybe a grid, something to give us some sense of what were the bases of the evaluation of the bids. It doesn't have to be the exact score, but, what were the costs that each of them put forward, what tiny narrative summary or some explanation as to why this one, even if the cost was slightly higher, you felt they were offering better quality services. I don't want to make a ton of work for you all, but we just have to, I need to have some basis to say that, like, I'm confident that this 260,000 or the 700,000 is going out to the right companies for the right amount, and that there is some oversight over it. I think that's sort of my job. And as in particular, then in relation to this 700,000, I would just also add, and this may be something that will happen anyway. I totally get why you're choosing 2 vendors right now, and this is sort of for task orders going forward. And I know that Paul does a really great job of reporting annually on the trees. And so I assume that then these task orders get wrapped into his tree report. So we'll know,
Right.
this year right. So I think that's the other important part of piece of this that I think does happen.
And by the way, we choose everybody that bid on. So there was not any company that was left. So pretty much who responds to it, we're gonna get a contract. Just to clarify on that one. And Nora, I like the idea about we're gonna try to, on the memo, we're gonna try to add a link on where is the RFP. I just
That'd be
need to
awesome.
work that with purchasing to see how we're gonna make that, because how that will be after the bid is open, but we'll work with purchasing to try to get that for the next one. I just need to answer one thing, just so to make it clear for the public, Nora, so it's not really for you, it's for people that is new to town, that I want them to understand the process also. All the money that we use on our capital money, we go through a very, very long process. So it's not just, we are coming with, we want to spend X on company A. It all started during our capital request, that we have to really come in front of a lot of committees and the whole common council to be able to justify why we're asking that amount of money for that type of project. So already there is some kind of oversight on how we're spending the money or how we're going to spend the money. After that, the money is allocated to certain accounts, and that's when we're about to create a PO and use that money, is that we have to go through our whole procurement process, that there is a whole manual, and depending on the value of it, we are responsible to follow it. So up to a certain value, we just need a quote. After that, we need a bid. After that, and then it goes over. And again, the purchasing agent now is the ones that oversees that process. So what we usually do, we let her know we need a bid, we need a proposal for this type of project. We have the money for this account approved. These are pretty much the technical specs of what we want, and we send it to her. She does all the review. She does all those questions to us. And she said, what is the criteria? I don't think this is a good criteria. Why are you gonna pick this one? Why are you gonna add another contract? Why you're adding as an amendment to other one? So we work all that internally. After that is when we come and then we do the process and we advertise and we decide on one, is when it comes in front of you guys for approval. So the staff in general from different departments already worked that out. And that's why we're just recommending that for you. And sometimes we do not have how to share the criteria, how we choose. So it's like on this one, we said there were 13 criterias. We're happy to describe which one was them because that's public, is on the RFP, but we don't want to just share what is the grade. When it's the lowest price is easy. We can make the table because the numbers are there, right? Whoever comes lower on a bid is the one that we recommend, and that's what you get the lower. And after that, after you guys approve, Common Council approves, goes back internally. It takes a good 2 to 4 weeks until we get a contract. Because then what happens is that the purchasing agent has to sign on what you guys approve. Legal has to sign to make sure that we cover all the bases. They're gonna look at the bid. They're gonna look at the procurement process. They're gonna look with controller to see if that money really exists and was on the right account. And then they're gonna start drafting the contract. So there is a very, very long process to all those bids that we ended up awarding. So I just wanna comment on that. So if the public is hearing, they know how the money is being spent.
And I can just add one thing to what Vanessa had said too. There were two really reasons or criteria that we decided to do another RFP. One of them being, as Chief Carr had said, it increased the value of the contract by over 5 times. So the purchasing agent says, oh, you have to do another RFP. And then the second reason was basically there's language that has to be included in the contract for ARPA funding that was not in the original contract a year ago with Homestead. So because of that, she recommended and legal recommended we have to do another RFP. It's basically the same kind of project, but we had to go through the process again for those 2 reasons.
Yeah, and I think, by the way, I think that's the right thing to do. But Vanessa, going back to what you're saying and trying to make it not be a total, dumping all this work on you. I agree with Nora. If you could do the link is great. I know the process is, as you said, very regimented in terms of now with the whole software system. And I wonder if Sharon has some sort of thing that she can provide at the end that's just very simple. I mean, so you don't have to do anything other than ask her to print out not the scores per se, but the criteria. This again, to make it simpler for you.
I'm gonna talk to her tomorrow. I'm gonna explain to her what are the concerns and how we can come up with something that you guys will be able to see. And then I'll have, whenever we have our next one, we'll see how it will work. I can contact you guys after the meeting, after I have some kind of a plan and discuss. I can reach out to Barbara, discuss, and then she can share with you.
Yeah, I mean, and I'd just like to reiterate, because, for those of us who've been on the committee for a while, on the council for a while, we are aware of how regimented the process is and the detail and the work that goes into it. And I think that, it is important that we have enough information for the public, enough information, for our votes. I don't want to overburden the staff as well. So I think it's, we have to find that happy medium of getting, that more information. I think the link, Nora, is a really great idea. My question now, though, is, are we comfortable, one, is there a time constraint here? Is this something that we want to table until we see some more information? Or are we comfortable moving it forward with, getting that link to the RFP? Tom, I guess I have to direct that to you specifically because this is such an important.
Yeah, again, I don't want to micromanage. I mean, I'd just like to see it. What is the timing on this?
I just want to, well, the truth is we want this to happen this month because we need this contract in place by end of August. So we can start the planting season in October. Yeah, otherwise we're going to miss that. If you guys are willing to, I'm happy to send we have the RFP. We do have in our office the PDF of the RFP. I'm happy to send to Barbara first thing in the morning tomorrow, and then she can share with you guys, and then maybe you can decide if you want to maybe vote on common council or send back to the committee if you have further questions. Meaning, if you approve tonight to move to common council, you're going to have the information tomorrow. And then during common council, you guys can send back to the committee if you feel that more information needs to be clarified or another bid needs to be put it out, or then you have the information to go ahead and approve.
That works for me.
Yeah, Councilor, I was also gonna just say just two things at the end. I know that, you know, I see both sides of the equation, and the thing is too, as far as the scheduling and the prioritization, we had met with the administration and economic development, and they expressed a very keen interest in expediting this contract as quickly as possible to support the tree initiative, which, as you know, there's an RFP out now for tree canopy assessment, and both this ARPA funding and the scope of services is supposed to align with the RFP for the tree canopy assessment and all these trees. Albeit there's no definitive plan here yet, but the point was to get the contract out ASAP, and that was a high priority from the administration, which is why we took the same contract really, and we're just like Vanessa said and Paul, and we're just spending ARPA funding with it. So it's the same contract we put out every year. I hear you about the watering. That was also a concern from a few other council members as well, especially Councilmember Shanahan too. That was a shared concern, and Vanessa and Paul are looking into that, and we will improve it, no doubt there. But the timing is more of a urgency on our end, because that's the directions we were giving from the administration and department. So we just took the same contract and really we're just using ARPA funding with it. And obviously we changed a little bit of the legalese in there with the law department, because we want to be able to effectively track and monitor the ARPA funding, which is why everything's a separate account, a separate contract. And we're just basically trying to do as much as quickly as possible to support the tree initiative. So that's really where it rightfully generated from. We weren't trying to rush anything through or steam anything through committee to council, but we didn't think that there was too much of a change other than the cost. I will say, yeah, about 5 times more, but the contract is essentially the same, and it's really just an ARPA contract. That was the only reason why this evolved as expeditiously as it did. But if there's certainly more information that could be given to help people feel comfortable and the members of the committee feel comfortable, given the scope and the large cost and the sensitivity to ARPA, I think Vanessa answered those questions.
Yeah, I mean, it does sound like, you know, the questions have been answered. Maybe in addition to the link, we could get a little more of, you know, of the extended version of Paul's memo, would be helpful too. And, you know, unedited.
Sorry, Paul.
Unedited.
I hope you saved it. I hope you saved it.
Yeah, I did. And I have the criteria that I can provide too.
Yeah, some of the
The
explanation.
criteria was part of the memo, Tom.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
All right, so then what we're going to do is we're going to vote on this to move forward to the council with the caveat that we will have this information in advance of the meeting. Okay, all right, all in, I'm going to call for a vote now. Oh, you ready to vote?
I'm voting.
Okay, all right, all in favor. Okay, so that passes unanimously. All right. And moving on to item 7. Authorize the mayor, Harry.
Excuse me.
Yes,
Oh, excuse me. Since we haven't done public participation yet, I just wanted to note for those watching on YouTube, if they do want to participate, they can join the meeting by just going to the norwalkct.org/meetings and click on the public link to this meeting, if there's anyone watching on YouTube that would like to participate.
thank you, Larry. And, you know, and I might as well add at this point too, since we did have that technical problem, if there is anyone watching, you know, later when you know, if you weren't able to get on and then went on to something else, to please email comments to me and the whole committee if you'd like, if you weren't able to get on. Okay. Okay, item 7. Authorize the mayor, Harry W. Willing, to execute a second amendment to the April 13th, 2021 agreement between the city of Norwalk and the Grasso Companies LLC for project PM 2021-1 pavement management program for a sum not to exceed $3,400,000, accounts noted. This is an amendment for the scope of work. And so I'm just going to turn this over to Anthony, Vanessa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Vanessa, please opine after this. I mean, this, hopefully we could give the committee a good overview so that they're comfortable. So there is a memo attached to this item in the back for supporting documentation, but the summary is that this is a second amendment, right? So it's a contractual change based on scope of work, right? Which is a dollar value, and it could be time, but in this particular case, it's a dollar value, which obviously would be tied to the schedule. This is not to be confused with a contract extension. So under Grasso's paving contract, our annual paving contract, we have the original contract that goes out to bid. And then there's provisions that the engineering staff and SMH staff have worked on in consultation with the law department that allows us to the option of utilizing 2 one-year extensions. So our recent committee meeting, the committee has approved the first extension. Okay, we have not approved the second extension. So the extension is basically a mechanism that allows us to administer contract amendments, right? So you can't take a base scope of a contract, let's just say paving contract, $3.5 million, and say, I want to do more roads. I'm going to amend this and add another $3.5 million, because that'd be the same thing. You'd be the same predicament as you were for the tree contract, right? Because contractors could argue and say, wait, I thought you were only going to do $3.5 million of work. To keep it fair and equitable, oranges to oranges, apples to apples. Anytime quantities change more than 25%, a typical rule of thumb in the industry is contractors have the ability to negotiate. But then what happens is also a term called scope creep, where if you keep adding scope and adding scope and adding scope, eventually gets that rebid point, right? Or an extension point, which we have legally in our front end of our documents that allows us to do that, right? We can't just keep adding money through amendments, because that's not part of the public procurement process or how our guidelines work for public works, and specifically in paving contracts. So the $3.4 million covers the cost of approximately 20 roads that are listed in that memorandum. Now, those roads are not going to necessarily be done all this calendar year or before the end of this paving year, which typically ends in November. Thanksgiving, plants close mid-December. It depends when the cold weather rolls in, when you're hitting below 40 degrees consistently. So that scope would bring us into late spring, early summer of 2023. And just to note, in that memorandum, it says the potential roads to get paved. So there may, out of the 20 roads, 18 may not, may get paved, 2 may not. Obviously, there's roads that we're focused on, like Flax Hill, portion of Flax Hill, portion of Philo Street, portion of West Rocks, and that's West Rocks. That's from Bain to Main Street, Main Avenue, excuse me. And the portion of Flax is from 5 Mile River to Highland Avenue, and then the portion of Philo is from Fox Run to Hunter's Lane, and that's because we'll be paving in the Hunter's Lane area. So there's a reason why those bigger roads are on there. We know that it's a hot topic. I know personally the administration, and Vanessa knows too, and the council members have been getting questions about our roads and why the conditions that they're in. But there are reasons for that, like the utility work from SNU, from Eversource, private contractors on West Rocks Road. So Eversource is almost done with their restoration, whether it's curb to curb resurfacing or curb to middle of the road. They've made very good progress. So Eversource is almost done. They worked in areas like Shorefront Park. They're restoring a trench on West Rocks. They work by a few of the schools, but they are handling a lot of those bigger roads that were left to people's dissatisfaction. We can understand why. The water department, First District Water, they're repaving from curb to curb from, I believe, Creeping Hemlock, from St. Mary's up to Butternut Lane on West Rocks, and that'll be curb to curb. So there's a lot of work that's outside of our control that we're not going to pave if we know the utility company is required to do that restoration. So we understand that it's been a hot topic. I know the staff has been working feverishly to update the maps. If you notice too, on the city's website, our last paving update was 6/14, and that's because the contractor hasn't really paved since then and is reworking schedules. You'll see a lot of paving in the Soundview area in July, Iris Court, and the Rowayton area. They'll be paving citywide, and you'll see that because the map that's online right now, there's a plan map, there's a progress map. So at the end of the day, the progress map, once 100% complete, will match what's planned. And maybe we'll go beyond that. Or maybe there might be one segment below, but there'll be reasons for that. The third map you're not seeing is the 5-year paving forecast, which I know Vanessa, her staff are taking a fresh look and reprioritizing some of the roads based on our surveys, based on drivability, based on our own field observations, and based on our third-party consultants. So that's why the 5-year paving forecast is not on there, and it will be up later this fall. That we promised everybody. So there'll be 3 maps at the end of the day: the plan map, the progress map, and then the 5-year paving forecast map. So that's separate in the side. But for tonight, the $3.4 million is for the 20 roads, and again, that's between now and spring and early summer of next year. And again, there's a lot that goes in it between the planning, the design, the construction. But the first step is asking for the money. And then the first step is putting things in the contract to allow for our contract extensions, which we did, I think, about 1.5 years ago, or 2 years ago, when we had a paving contract. We added language to allow us to include 2 one-year extensions. We're not sure if we're going to do the second year, the second extension with Grasso Companies. That's going to be a department decision and in consultation with my staff. But we have done the first extension, and this is for the second amendment. So we created the mechanism to fill, we'll call it the Public Works kitty, and now we're coming to the committee for your approval to fill the kitty with the $3.4 million. And Vanessa, I may have left some things out, but if you want to please provide additional context.
Well, I just want to add that, again, the reason why we do this, we have been doing this way for many, many years, is that we do not have the money when we put it out to bid for the whole year. So that's why as soon as the new fiscal year comes in, we have more money available based on the new budget, and then we add the extra scope. You probably remember that when we did the extension on the contract, I specifically clarified this is the extension, but we're going to come back in July 1st to be able to add more scope when funds will be available. So that's what it is.
Questions? Comments? Yeah, I mean, just to add to it, yes, we are getting a lot of complaints. I hear a lot of complaints, but it is very challenging. You have all of these projects going on, and you can't do the repaving until they're done. So I appreciate the work that you're doing, managing it all.
Well, Madam Chair, the staff does a great job, and we pave anywhere from 7 to 12 centerline miles a year. I could tell you cities like White Plains, and I know Stanford's not doing anywhere near that. And I know the city of White Plains is maybe doing 2 to 3 centerline miles a year. So, and White Plains has 60,000 residents. We have 90. And I have never seen a public works department push out as much paving as this department. And I've worked with several others.
Okay. Anything else? All right, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Okay, that carries unanimously. All right, so that is the end of our new business. Moving on to information and discussion. I'd just like to remind people before we get into the project status that the honorary street naming for Fire Chief Sanford Anderson is on Friday at 1 o'clock. And that is happening at the corner of Raymond and Water Street, correct? Raymond and Water Street.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so I just want to remind people about that. And then let's move on to project status, Rowayton Avenue Bridge, and then on to paving curbs and sidewalks.
Okay, well, if for those who don't know,
Congratulations.
we're extremely pleased to announce that the Rowayton Avenue Bridge is open to vehicular traffic, two-way traffic. The project, although not complete, is very close. It's substantially complete. There is a number of punch list items that are missing from the project in an effort to get it open as promised by the 4th of July weekend. And those items are like the Merritt Parkway guide rail, the staining of the, it's called a form liner, but really it's imprinted concrete that looks like stone, but it's not stone. It's supposed to resemble a New England dry stack stone, but that's a concrete color right now. The vendor is going to come in and stain the color of the stone over the next few weeks, weather pending, of course. There's curbing and sidewalk that need to get installed. So there are a few miscellaneous items that we haven't addressed yet. But again, that's intentional because our main focus and objective was to open the roads for the 4th of July traffic. We've gotten a lot of good feedback on it. We opened the road as early as possible without compromising the integrity of the asphalt. So kudos to Vanessa, Paul especially has put a lot of work into this. And we believe we're going to be turning over a very aesthetically pleasing product that's in line with the character of the neighborhood once the final site work is completed, which will be over the next few weeks.
Anthony, if you don't mind, I just want to add one quick thing. Also, I just want to thank you all for supporting the project. Because I know that when I came in front of you about a year ago, I have this idea on how we're going to do this project that was very different. We didn't really follow our regular procurement process on that one because we had to be a little bit creative to be able to get the bridge redone in a short period of time. So I do appreciate it now that we came to an end, that we're able to really deliver the bridge on the budget that we thought and on the time that we were a little bit delayed, a couple of weeks because of the COVID, but I think that considering all the delays and all the supply chain things wasn't that bad. But without your support and your belief and you guys, because remember, we purchased the culvert separately, direct from the manufacturer. And then also we did a very kind of a proposal, got some quotes from bridge people, and then we came in front of you for approval. So thanks to you also, we were able to deliver the bridge before the 4th of July.
Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I just want to add kudos to you guys. I mean, it was a big project. It was an emergency project, and you really went all out to fix it. And not only did you fix it, you made it better. You made the road, it's a very important road down in the district, and you made what you could have just replaced exactly what was there, but you did do more than that, and you made it better. I mean, it's aesthetically pleasing. It's got a sidewalk. I just really want to commend you for all the hard work you guys all did, because it really shows the dedication of your team, and it really is appreciated by everyone. So thank you.
Thank you, Tom. We'll always give the car back waxed and full of gas, unlike some of the kids do to us.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, a job well done, and just getting it done as quickly as you were able to is really good. And thank you for the updates on what was that, on Friday that you opened it. Yeah, well done. Okay, let's move on to paving, curbs, and sidewalks.
Okay, we'll keep this update brief, but just to give you the list of what we'll be working on in the near future for paving, just where you'll expect to see Grasso companies. Again, this is strictly paving, Soundview Avenue, and that's from Highland to Flax, Aviation Court, Primrose Court, Iris Court, Woodchuck Court, Duford Road, Halleck Parkway, and several others. That work will be done over the next few weeks. Again, paving will be picking up from now to the end of the year. I know that the Grasso companies has a lot of different areas to work on. They also have our curb and sidewalk contract. One of them, Deering Construction, has the other curb and sidewalk contract, but they are working in the Elmwood area for curbs and sidewalks. And once the Elmwood area is done, they're going to go over to the contractor is going to go over to the Plymouth, Ohio, Center, Harriet areas to finish curb and sidewalk there. And the reason why the curb and sidewalks had to be delayed in that particular area was because Eversource had to relocate their gas mains because of our new drainage work. So Eversource had to go first for gas. We had to go second for the drainage. Unfortunately, when we were still working on the drainage, the sidewalk and curb contractor said, "Hey, we're ready." Unfortunately, we weren't ready. So we sent them over to Elmwood, which was another priority area. They're wrapping up there. They're more than 80% complete. And I believe the week of mid-July, around July 18th, they'll be back to the Plymouth, Ohio, Harriet area to finish the curb and sidewalk. And then later on in the year, that area will be paved. But that's the general area of where they're working now for curbs and sidewalks, both contractors, Deering and Grasso Construction. Soundview, Elmwood, Plymouth, Harriet, Ohio, that area for the next few weeks. Several weeks, I should say.
Okay, any questions before we move on? Okay. Yep, it's that time of year, so. Okay, great, thank you. So under discussion, I'd just like to add a couple of topics that, Anthony, we talked about a little bit. There were some questions about street sweeping and garbage pickup. So I think, Darlene, did you want to ask a specific question to Anthony, or do you want to just, have Anthony give us an update?
I I think a general update, but I think, just thinking in terms of, development brings more people. And so, and because, South Newark is such an urban core, and people parking everywhere, has there been any discussion, which I'm sure there has been, about increasing street sweeping schedule or something? I mean, I think at some point we're going to have people moving their cars on certain days just so we can, clean up some of the trash and debris that remains on certain sides of the street where people just park and don't move. But I was just wondering, has there been any thought given to any of that yet?
Well, we do have, I mean, just to give a brief overview, and Councilman Young, I know I provided this information earlier, but we do street sweep the SoNo business districts every Monday morning between April 1st through November 30th. And those maps, Larry, before I conclude this portion or this item, I just want to share. I think I might have permission, but if I don't, if you can give it to me, I just want to share our street sweeping maps that we have for the SoNo area and for Wall Street. And just a few more points of clarification too, just at least so people are informed. So this is a lot of information. Beginning on May 1st, we do sweep the housing projects once a month. That was a newer initiative that I know Chris Torrey worked on with Adam Bilski for the Newark Housing Authority. So on May 1st, we do sweep the housing projects monthly, beginning on Memorial Day weekend through Labor Day weekend. We have, I believe, 2 years ago, we implemented street sweeping from Calf Pasture Beach, Shady Beach, and to Vets Park every Saturday morning. And again, that's between Memorial Day and Labor Day. But that's just to rewind a little bit. Starting on March 1st, we do begin our city-wide street sweeping. And that's done over 26 routes. And that number is specific because that's tied to the number of routes that we have for snowplow and garbage routes. So 26 routes for garbage, snowplow, and then also street sweeping. They're all tied together. Each route generally takes about a week and a half to 2 weeks to complete for the street sweeping. That's separate from the those listed earlier for Calf Pasture Beach, Shady Beach, and for SoNo and for the Wall Street, which that equates, if you do 26 routes every 2 weeks, that's how you get 52 weeks for the year. So over the year, we do hit a route every 2 weeks. We did recently include probably just when I started the Meadow Street area being swept as needed. We do understand that area accumulates a lot of debris, a lot of litter, a lot of trash, definitely noted. And I know that we do sweep that area as needed. We were doing it every Wednesday, but the problem that, and I know Chris could speak to a little bit more about it. The problem was that the vehicles are really hampering our efforts, you know, and to be fair, we don't want to see anybody get towed, and neither does the administration. We try to educate and inform rather than come down punitive, but the end result is still the same, that we can't street sweep. And there's a lot of cars. I know Chris has been doing this a lot longer than myself in Norwalk. He could add, but you've seen it. It becomes impossible, and the sweeper zigzagging is the same problem with trying to plow, but it's even worse when there's no snow, because when there is snow, people tend to move a bit more. With the street sweeping on the blue sky conditions, it's like, oh, well, we'll just leave the car here. There's a lot of signage there. There is a such thing as sign pollution, so we're not adding more, but there is signage there that informs the residents or the public to move the car. That's kind of the issues that we're running into with the street sweeping. We do have 3 street sweepers, knowing that there's going to be an influx of development and a population increase. We do have 3 street sweepers planned for our next 3 years of capital request. They're Elgin street sweepers, but each street sweeper is about $230,000. And some of the mechanical, it's called drive shaft, but some of the mechanical components that do the cleaning of the actual dirt, they've been failing, and they tend to fail over time. And those are $50,000 repairs. So rather than repair a $230,000 piece of equipment with $50,000, we have already, in our rolling stock program, we have already identified the need for 3 new Elgin sweepers. Now, I know the question has come up, well, can you go green? Can you do electric? Sure, but the price difference between the $230,000 traditional sweeper and the electric is about $800,000, give or take, for an electric sweeper, $230,000 for a traditional street sweeper. But just to, again, that's because the technology is newer. We expect over the next few years that the price for electric would drop, and we would certainly try one. There's no question. But getting back to your original point, we do have those those different parameters in place where we are picking up additional garbage. I know we're going to be working with the mayor's office and economic development to actually staff. Operations is going to staff, although the plan's not finalized yet, but we're under development to provide 3 full-timers who are going to basically patrol the Washington Street area and pick up trash and litter along the curb line and the sidewalk on Saturday mornings and Sunday mornings. That hasn't been, again, that plan hasn't been defined yet, but we are just started recent discussions with the mayor's office and economic development to help support their Washington Street initiative. So that's that thing. And then lastly, you know, we are trying to use the resources that we have for the street sweeping operations. We will send a sweeper out as good stewards, especially for projects like for ConDOT. There's other partners that we work with that we provide sweepers at no cost, just because we don't want the nuisance of the dust and the gravel and everything spewing around. And if the street really does need it in the area, I know Chris lives in that area. He walks the sites. He knows exactly where. He's been here for a long time too, so he knows where the litter tends to accumulate. So we do send out spot sweepers as needed to, just to pick up a lot of the areas, especially in the Sono, Wall Street, kind of Washington Street area. But I would like to share my screen. I just wanted to show you the maps that we have. And Chris, if you want to add any additional context, please feel free.
I think we lost Chris.
All right. But the picture's worth a million words, but this is on the city website. I'll follow up with the links after this meeting, Councilman Young and members of the committee. But you will see that there is a plan in place to street sweep the Wall Street Business District, Wall, Main, Brunel, Belden, River, Isaac Street. And again, that's Monday mornings. And that's 3 a.m. to 8 a.m. That's April to November. But again, our citywide street sweeping starts in March for all basically the secondary and tertiary roads, weather permitting, of course. So this is the Wall Street area. And then we have the Sono Business District, Washington, North Main, South Main, Water, Ann Street, and Marshall. And again, Monday mornings, 3 to 8 a.m. So that's Monday morning into Monday later morning. And the routes are outlined in red. And again, there is that note about cars parked in posted areas going to be towed, but we truthfully try not to tow them and we work around them. That's a different discussion and obviously a concern that's shared by us as well because it hampers our operations. But again, there's ramifications if we utilize PD to tow all the cars. There'll be a lot of angry people, and I can understand why. And the last map I just wanted to show you too, and I'll send you links to all this rather than the narrative gets a little bit exhaustive. So this is the street sweeping routes. Again, you'll notice numbers, and the key thing here is to notice 26. So the street sweeping routes follow the garbage routes, which follow the snowplow routes, and that's broken up into quadrants in certain areas for each of the foremen that work under Chris, because we have three road supervisors, they're called, or foremen, that help patrol the different areas and identify and do an advanced party search when it comes to snow removal or to other things, ice. Let's say if we get complaints north of the Merritt, we'll have that foreman go in that area and those routes to check and make sure things are copacetic or if they need attention. But that goes across the board, whether it's ice accumulation, whether it's debris accumulation, whether it's potholes. So we do an advanced search from the foreman and then staff follows. So there are maps in place. You'll see all the roads here. They're very small. I'm not going to zoom in, but these maps are available online. And our website too also has a street sweeping schedule. And Chris and Darlene Bird are working on updating that so that when it starts, you'll see, routes 1, 5, and 8 completed, for June, then July. That table has not been updated, but will. And Chris is aware of it, and they're working on updating that table now for what's been completed for March, April, May, June, and what will be July of this year. So we do hear you. We have a plan. And again, I think that the patrol and the additional effort on Washington Street will help, and that'll be a foreman, a driver, and a laborer each day. So there'll be three personnel assigned to that area for 4 hours, Saturday and Sunday, for an undetermined amount of weekends.
Ms. Young, you have another question?
Yeah, so I do appreciate that, and I do from time to time see the street sweepers, but so, and I know, you talked about Washington Street and the more of the business area, but when we're talking a little bit past that, and particularly where the new apartments are going to be built, but there's a part of South Main Street right by the train station, on the next block. Cars just don't move. And I've had business owners say, hey, how do we get some of this stuff mode. So how do we communicate to the residents? I mean, I know we don't want to tow people's cars, but how do we communicate that the street sweeper is coming through, and maybe we ask for people's cooperation or something to move their,
We could work with the communications director to utilize some of the social media platforms. You know, the 911 emergency call, the code red we have, I don't know if that would be effective. I've seen that not work more than work. But I think social media, you know, we could potentially put letters or issue letters, maybe not certified mail, because that might be a little bit more costly and a little bit more time consuming. You know, I'm just thinking, to answer your point, totally off the cuff.
well, just in this conversation too, we might be able to utilize the second taxing district, their mailing or their communication efforts. But I think just letting people know that we need you to move your car, because I have seen those street sweepers trying to maneuver between empty spaces, and those not empty spaces are the spaces that need to be cleaned the most. So I think it's something that we need to really consider, because, you know, South North goes all the way down the street. It's all over, and I'd like to try and assist with that, getting folks to.
Is there some kind of like alternate side of the street, kind of like
Right.
where are they able to move their cars to on the days that it's being swept? You know, I think that's probably the question is.
Right, I mean, the signs are there. I know that there's been talk of adding more signs, but then there's the opposite view of sign pollution, right? And you're right, like, I mean, people, you could put a million signs up. Don't park, you know, don't park in front of the hydrant. People know the hazard to put, you know, park in front of the hydrant, and you risk getting a ticket. In my experience, other than the enforcement, I've not seen much. I mean, you could educate to a point, right? And you're right, we don't want it to get to the police department level where we have 20 cars getting towed off the block either. That's not fair, and it's not something we're striving for. I'd rather go the education route through the rather than the punitive route. But I think social media would help. I think utilizing taxing districts, mailing would help, and their social media platforms. You know, we could put the stuff on our website, but unless you know what you're looking for and can navigate through it, it may not reach certain populations.
Can I just, like, what about something like, you know, like a warning on the car, you know, like a warning ticket, and then, you know, eventually move it to a fine as opposed to actually towing? Maybe that would be something that could be done.
Yeah, they do that. We used to do that, or still do. I know when the parking authority issues the for people who, like, first initial times when they run out of, when the meter expires, they issue kind of like, hey, welcome to Norwalk. This is just a warning. It's just a warning ticket, right? There's no fee associated with it.
The other thing I would suggest, this is what they used to do in Chicago, not in the downtown, but in like the residential neighborhoods, where they would come through once a month or once every other month. And I know would be a lot of work for your crew, but they would come through, like, I don't know, 4 days beforehand, and they would stick up temporary signs all over, and they'd be bright orange. And it would be like, this street will be cleaned on this day at this time, move your car or else. And so, I mean, everyone knew, right? It was a lot of work on the sort of advance end, but like the streets were empty when they were coming through. So something like that, maybe in combination with Barbara's point of, you know, a ramp up system of a first time ticket, or, you know, first time warning, second time ticket. Because I do hear Darlene's point, and it's, you know, if there is a sort of set schedule, you know, where you're going to be in advance, you know, you could buy one set of those placards, and they would literally just move them around the city. You could see them kind of shuffle through the neighborhoods as they were going to do the cleaning. And that might be an option as well to consider.
We agree. We could certainly look into that. We do understand the concerns, and it's an issue every municipality faces, and how we deal with it, you know, will be the policy direction from the administration, of course, with the staff's recommendations as well, and yours here. And then if there are recommendations from the public and they've seen something that we haven't tried that would be effective, we're game for it.
And this gets to be one of those points that everyone says, like, it's alternate side parking stinks, but like, we all learn to cope with it in any number of cities I've lived in. So
Right.
like to a certain extent, if we're getting to be a city where there's density that's high enough to justify that in some neighborhoods, like we may have to consider it.
Agreed.
Since we're on this subject, Mr. Livingston, we were talking earlier today, you had a question about the fourth taxing garbage pickup, which I know is something that's being addressed.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I think.
Actually,
I'm
Anthony,
sure
could
you-
you just stop sharing your screen so that
Yes.
we can see? Great,
Yeah,
thank you.
I'm sure you've heard lots of comments over the years about people from the fourth district, I guess, particularly about asking, about where we are on, let me back up. I know you're considering looking at the possibility of providing citywide garbage pickup throughout the fourth district. I guess the first question is where are we at that? And the other part of this is are we able to provide some sort of periodic pickup, say, like pick up leaves at the end of the year or Christmas trees and things like that, even if we don't go that route? I don't expect necessarily an answer right now, but is there something we can provide some sort of service like the trees? I mean, one resident mentioned to me, how do they put a Christmas tree in the back of their car and take it over to, Smith Street? And it's a reasonable question. I mean, I know
Right.
everything costs money, but so I'm just curious what your thinking is these days on this stuff.
We could revisit, to take the second one first. We could definitely revisit the special services that you're referring to. That's the yard waste. That's the bulky waste pickup is a service provided to all residents. But the special services like the yard waste pickup, the Christmas trees, that is only provided to residents right within the fourth taxing district, which is the Seward portion of the city. So for those who don't maybe know, it took me a while to get that. The fifth taxing district is a floating district, and it's the non-Seward portions of the city. So every time somebody's added or parcels added from the non-Seward portion to the Seward portion, they leave the imaginary floating fifth district and they become part of the fourth district, which really is the entire city. That's Seward. The non-Seward portion still stays the fifth. So back way before all of us, decades ago, the city made a decision to tie sanitation services with sanitary sewer services. We are looking as part of, so go to the first question, Councilman, we are looking at a number of waste management models. One of them is the collection of citywide garbage or sanitation. Municipal solid waste is the proper term for it, but that would be citywide so that those who don't have sewer can still get the garbage services. And if they get the garbage services, then they would ideally get all the special services. So we went through this iteration before COVID. We took a pause, obviously, during the pandemic, especially during the spike. And earlier this year, maybe a few months ago, myself and Chris Story, and when Ms. Palladino was here, we met with the administration. We updated our presentation, which was the citywide municipal garbage. We gave our recommendations. We gave a concept of how it would work, a user fee, like the sanitary sewer user fee versus a mill rate. Again, a fee is a user charge, right? So it's like an enterprise fund almost. But that fee would be equitable to only a certain land use code. So basically up to four family residents, 4 units would get the citywide garbage. After that, there would be no commercial, no mixed use. So there's a model that, and 4 units is kind of like the pinch point before you need a few toters and a dumpster. And there's a mathematical formula on that based on how many tons an average family generates every year, which is between 1 and 1.5 tons annually of garbage. So when you start crossing the 4-unit realm, 5-unit realm, a lot of municipalities start going, they consider that commercial, or they don't pick it up, one or the other. But we did a study and we looked at the land use code. We looked at all the parcels in the city of Norwalk. We looked at what's single family, 2-family, 3-family, 4-family. They all have different codes, and we excluded out the mixed use, the commercial. So where we're at with that is the next stop, or the next step in the process, I should say, is we are going to meet with the CFO, and we're going to brief him and the administration again on the financial aspect of it, right? Because now if you go to citywide garbage collection, you're going to have a user fee, but you're still going to have, it's going to cost more to get rid of the garbage, right? I think currently we pick up from 13,000 parcels, now would go up to almost 23,000 parcels. Those numbers are approximate, of course, but there's a lot of parcels that would be included for citywide collection. So that's more money on our end, in the sense that when we procure these contracts, which all three expire with our current vendor, City Carding, on June 30th of 2023 next year, we're working with the administration to develop a model that we're comfortable with, that is ideal for the city, that we could then include into our RFP for the waste management services from the vendor. So we have three contracts right now, one for garbage, one for recycling, and one for operation of our transfer station at Crescent Street. Those are the three contracts that we have. And it's about $4 to $5 million worth annually of work, of contractual cost. Since those contracts expire, we're going to be issuing an RFP. But before we issue the RFP, we want to at least have a concept model, or maybe even a preliminary model of what we're comfortable with and where we see the waste management services going. So as of right now, we don't have garbage pickup citywide, but we did give a narrative and a concept to the administration, which will now brief the CFO on, hey, if we did this, it would be this range of cost per household, again, up to 4 units. We don't recommend commercial garbage pickup. That would be extremely costly. And there's a lot of complications that come with commercial garbage pickup. A lot of municipalities have actually done away with it for a lot of reasons that we could have a separate presentation on once we advance our concept through the administration. But we're there. We have our numbers. We have preliminary numbers of what they would cost, for a mill rate versus a user fee. But our initial recommendations in one scenario is to get off the mill rate, issue a fee or assert a fee, and only include residential units up to four, and no commercial garbage. Because again, that cost would be astronomical, because it's also very complicated to bill and to give a commercial entity a fee when the volumes vary greatly. Like 50 Washington might vary. Those parcels, there's like 10 parcels that have 30 storefronts. They're going to generate a much different amount of volume of waste.
Do you pick up for multifamily or more than 4 family houses the rest of the city?
Right now, most of the collection, again, in the Fort Taxing District, is residential. There is some commercial businesses that we pick up, and there's this old town route. So it really is based on an old route that has existed from the dawn of time, where it was basically grandfathered into City Carding's current contract. And on that route, there's different myths about where it originated, whether it was trolley route or just certain businesses that wanted the collection, et cetera, et cetera. But we grandfathered that route so that no one who was getting garbage before would not get it now. So as part of the RFP, no matter what scenario we go in, whether it's citywide or partial, the old town route would be abolished. And we have to start looking at things apples to apples. And again, why the garbage was tied to the sanitary sewer, again, not a great model, but nonetheless, it's one that exists and what we have to work with today. And that's part of what we're going to fix now is the land use classification, right? The amount of how much you pay for a user fee should be based on the number of units you have. But the problem is if you have a user fee for 1 unit, someone who has a 3-unit house is going to pay 3 times the amount. So we're trying to look for that pinch point. These are questions that we're still going through.
Well, I appreciate that. I know it's not easy, so I'm glad to hear you're thinking about all these issues. I think that'll be really helpful for people to know. And if you mentioned the special services, I mean, I think maybe if you can think about those as we move forward, and the Christmas tree one strikes me as one particularly helpful, but I'll leave that to you guys, what makes sense from your department staffing situation.
We could look at that. The special services would be easy to look at, but we are going to continue moving forward with the concept for our waste management model. But again, that'll tie into the RFP that's going to be issued in a few months once we finalize or at least get a concept of what model we're comfortable with.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that, Anthony. Nora?
Can I just ask a quick follow-up on that? So I guess I'm curious, and I'm all for all this. This all sounds great. This is definitely the right direction to move in. Thrilled that you're doing it. So not a criticism, but I am wondering when in the process we're going to be giving input. How far down the road are you going to be into your model before it comes in front of us? And just trying to figure out the balance between you all doing your professional services job versus, getting public input on kind of what is needed, what makes the most sense. So just kind of wondering what your thought process is on that.
Well, I'd say ideally, we need to give the policy direction from the administration. The mayor, I would like for him to be comfortable and the chief of staff to be comfortable with what, they feel is a adequate model or models, right? So there could be different scenarios. But at this point, since it is getting close to the conclusion of the city carding contract from June of next year, and we don't have a waste program manager at this point too. So we're the roads, we have mechanisms in place. We planned for this. We knew this was gonna, kind of happen. So we have been moving things along as quickly as we could, but we still need the policy direction. And once we get the blessing of the concept from the administration, at that point, what could happen is we could formulate at least a draft RFP. And then whether it's through presentations or public outreach, or even public presentations that we have a separate Zoom where we can get public feedback. Again, we need to first get the policy direction, and then we could detail the model of how it's going to work. But we would get common council or feedback, whether it's through committee or full council, both, even perhaps probably be a better scenario for that. And then we'd obviously do a public information session. We would advertise it for this meeting, but we could do a separate number of meetings aside. We have maybe like we did for the flooding forum. We had groups come in and give their input. We could have a municipal solid waste forum, and we could say, hey, what would you like to see? What would you not like to see? But unfortunately, at some point, there's going to be a cutoff of the number of units. If you pick up from more than 4 units and you pick up commercial garbage, I don't know how the operating budget would be able to sustain that. That would be a tremendous. I mean, you're talking an order of magnitude of 10, 20 times more than we're paying now for garbage. So I think fiscally we're going to be limited, but I think there's going to be a balance of the amount of services we can provide citywide. I think we could do it citywide for a reasonable cost, close to what the garbage mill rate is now. Some might be paying more, some might be paying less, but then you get the special services. And Tom, to your point, maybe we increase some of those special services too. So that's fair across the board. But there will be public engagement, and certainly engagement from stakeholders such as elected officials besides the administration. But it really starts with that policy direction first, which we're very close. I know the mayor and the chief of staff are thinking it over, but the next meeting is with the CFO to see what checks and balances we have there and what we can actually sustain.
Just to that point, Anthony, we can help you in West Norwalk, because I know it's come up in past years where they've considered this. And I know it was considered before my term in the council, and I was told that it was the concept was withdrawn because of the local carters who were feeling they were losing their business. But I think that's changed a bit since then.
Yeah, the number of prevalent vendors has dropped significantly. There used to be
That's what I heard.
10, 12 medium to larger companies. Now there's really 4. And 4 or 5. There's about a handful who might be upset with going citywide, because you're right. Now the consideration is you go citywide, you have one vendor. Now all the other mom and pop and smaller vendors may get pushed out, or they will, to a point, right? Unless some private properties still determine, hey, I want my private hauler. Yes, I have to pay the user fee, but I'm still gonna pay for my private hauler. They might do that. But again, this is only for 4 units. It's not for after 4 units, you're considered basically mixed use or commercial, so you wouldn't get that citywide pickup. I do have numbers that I could share, follow up to this, just order of magnitude of what the difference in scenarios would be. If you did citywide pickup, if you did 4-family, we looked at all the median property value, because right now the garbage mill rate is tied to property value. So the more property value you have, the higher mill rate you're paying. Yet you have these bigger houses that maybe don't have as many occupants in there. And we actually see in different socioeconomic areas, the smaller homes and the smaller properties actually generate their higher volume generators, waste generators, than the larger houses. So the space doesn't generate the waste, the occupants do. And then we're actually seeing that, again, that's another, much like the sanitary sewer, the property value shouldn't be tied to the mill rate for garbage, because you can have such a small property and need 5 toters, or you can have a larger property and have people never home. So that's not really a good apples to apples comparison. So that model would clean up a lot of the, I guess, the somewhat antiquated intricacies of our current model.
Nora, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, on a totally different point but related. Is there conversation about moving the substation, transfer station, I'm not sure exactly what you call it, but city karting station on Meadow Street? Now that the school is going to be there, is that part of the consideration for this contract?
I'm not aware of any of those discussions. They may be happening, but in full transparency, that's not a topic that's been discussed with me or the department.
Okay, well, I'm putting it on your radar as a topic that I have every intention of having discussed. So I'm hopeful that it will come on your radar sooner rather than later. But that's something that I certainly feel strongly about. I don't think having all of those garbage trucks going down that street when there are children in that building is safe or wise. So it's certainly something that I would like to see be on the plan for the new contract coming up.
Well, our contract, though, just to clarify for the transfer station, which you correctly said it is a transfer station, is on Crescent Street. So the contract that we have operated for our transfer station, the city's transfer is on Crescent Street. Meadow Street is owned and operated by City Karting, separate and independently from our contract.
Right, but I have to imagine that if City Karting is told that a condition of getting a contract with us renewed is doing something about moving out.
Yeah, if they get, yeah, right, if they become one of the qualified finalists, or they are the finalists for the contract, yeah, that's a different.
Right, so I guess, yeah, so I guess I'm saying I will object to renewing City Karting's contract if they're continuing to use the Meadow Street location as a transfer station. So I'm putting that out there, full transparency going forward. I think that that's something that, given all your planning, I just wanted to make sure is on the radar because it is a major concern for me.
Anything else on this? I mean, it's really good that we're having this discussion publicly. It's something we, going back to the 4th district and the garbage pickup citywide, we've been talking about for years, right, amongst ourselves. So it's good to have this discussion publicly and know that, it's being addressed, talked about, and there's some, plans moving forward. So thank you. Okay, let's move on to tree operations and programming.
Okay, Madam Chair, so since the June Public Works Committee meeting, we have planted an additional 3 trees. I believe that raises our spring 2022 planting count from 168 to 171 trees. And that also increases our fall of 2021 plus spring of 2022 tree planting count from 261 to 264. So we wanted to note that there were three trees planted since last month's meeting. Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, Paul. It's good to have the accurate numbers. So we are up to 264 from last fall, and obviously doesn't include this year's fall 2022 planting season. Paul, is there anything you wanted to add? We do have the tree canopy assessment RFP that has went out to bid. Kudos to engineering, operations, recreation and parks, and assisting economic development with our input and expertise. We think we have a good product. I believe there was an addendum issued already to clarify some bidder questions, and bids are due back July 11th. Paul, is that close? What?
I
I'm not
believe
sure on
so.
that. I know it's mid-July.
Purchasing- Yeah, it's in July. Purchasing had moved it because of the addendum. So that'll be coming up. And I could just give you for the 171 trees for the spring, the total cost was $124,432.40. And then for the year, for the 264 trees, the total cost was $199,126.65.
Thank you, Paul. Madam Chair, that's all
Okay.
we have on the tree planting report.
Ms. Young? You're muted.
So very sorry. Couple of things. I didn't thank you, Anthony, for just giving that update on the street sweeping scheduling. So I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
And I am here to help in any way I can to with the second taxing district or whomever to try to get something going. And taking some of the ideas that we discussed here to kind of move that forward. And then really, I just have to say hats off to Paul Sotnick, the tree guy, and the team of all the folks there at DPW who assist with it, because you guys have done a phenomenal job in planting trees, and I know that the communities that you are doing the planting in and the households really appreciate it. We particularly appreciate it in South Norwalk. It really is going to make a difference. I appreciate all of your hard work for that. So just wanted to say
Thank you.
that.
Agreed. And then Paul, I was going to mention, you've always mentioned the sort of $1,000 a tree. It sounds like you got a better deal on that. You've done a better job. That's great to hear.
Yeah, because of the selection of the species, it worked out that it was less than that. So yeah, 264 for the 199.
That's great. Great news. A lot more trees we can plant.
Great. Okay, well done. Monthly solid waste report.
Yes, Madam Chair, so the MSW total tonnage out, which is what's collected curbside and at the transfer station collectively, is, I believe it's up almost 10% from the same point last year in 21, but the recycling is down, I think about 3 to 4%. So the numbers, there's less of an imbalance between garbage and recycling, which is good. Some numbers are still a little bit higher, some numbers are still a bit lower, but we're starting to see a baseline trend of new norm, or I'll say maybe a slightly higher pre-pandemic norm, but we're getting there. It hasn't had any impact on our operations, but it is nonetheless interesting to see and think, why would the garbage be up and the recycling be down, right? The garbage makes sense. People are home more, people are, working from home, maybe they're home more. You would think that there'd be more recycling too. But unfortunately there's not. But again, that number compared to last year is only down 3%. So kind of makes sense, right? More people were home, so they were recycling more last year. Maybe a smaller number of people are home, so that's why you're getting a little bit less of the recycling. You're not talking a major tonnage difference either. So, the numbers, the percentages seems kind of high, 9%, 3%, especially the 9% one seems high for garbage. But if you actually look at the tonnage difference, it's less than a few hundred tons. So I mean, that to me is saying that things are going back to the pre-pandemic level.
Do you think people are getting complacent about recycling? I don't know if anyone hears anything from, their constituents or anything like that. I just wonder, why, I mean, it's not a big amount, you're right, but it is down, and it seems like, we want to keep moving this energy forward, right? What is it? Reuse, reduce, recycle. So we just want to keep getting that message out to people. Anyway.
Barbara, what I've heard is people are reading that, recycling doesn't work anymore. China's not taking our waste. And I think they have become complacent or don't think it's worthwhile. I think always we can educate people. I think we need a bit more education on this, and hopefully a new person who I call the garbage czar will help with that.
Yes. Yeah. How's that going? Do you have the process? Is it still, the job still posted?
The job posting closed yesterday on July 4th. We had, as of last Thursday, when I checked NeoGov, which is our basically our job vacancy database, where we could track applications, we had about 1,650 views. I believe there was about 35 applications submitted. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're qualified applications. So HR personnel will review the applications, see if they've met the minimum requirements. You always hope for a good number of qualified candidates, right? We're not going to review resumes and qualifications that don't match the job spec, of course. If they don't miss the minimum requirements, if they don't meet the minimum requirements, it's a non-starter. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Probably this week we have still staff on vacation, with those returning from vacation. Next week, we're hoping to coordinate with HR to begin reviewing the resumes. So that's the week of the 11th. And then the week of the 18th or the 25th, we would likely begin interviews
Okay.
with the selection panel.
Yeah, and let's just follow that and get some more education going once that person's hired and gets, their feet on the ground.
Absolutely, but we are moving forward. I know operations desperately needs the assistance because, kudos to Chris and Eileen Bird and the foreman there. Everybody's pitched in to kind of backfill the vacant position. So, there's a lot of operations that goes on behind the scenes. So they're doing a great job, but it's and summer's a little bit of quieter time, but it's also a little hard on the staff because there's a lot of vacations. There's people on an injury, there's people who plan trips, there's people sick. So you tend to lose a lot of the public work staff during the summer months.
Ms. Johnson?
Thanks, Chair Smith. I was just hearing, this is totally like an N of 3, so I don't even know if this is representative, but some of this is the awareness of what Tom was saying about the recycling, but I'm also wondering, Chief Carr, if you've heard of the idea that some people are getting more educated about wish cycling, and if I'm using the term correctly, like things you think are recyclable but aren't, and so they're not actually, they're throwing them in the trash instead, but it's making our tonnage look a little less. Again, it's just speculation because I've only heard it from like 3 constituents that are thinking that, because I talked with them about, oh, I thought this was recyclable, but it's not. So
I think part of it is education. I think some people are getting complacent, but I think the numbers are very, very similar now. People understand for the most part that we're creatures of habit. Some people a bit more vigilant in the recycling than others in their households. But
that might be my cross section. I'm not sure. So.
Yeah, I'm pretty strict in the house with the recycling too. But the new waste programs manager, waste and recycling programs manager will continue the outreach. We'll enhance the outreach and the public education, and that could be in social media, that could be going to schools, commercial facilities, and really just opening people's eyes to it. But
that sounds great.
No, we're excited. I know the staff's excited, but so over the next few weeks, I imagine that we'll have, between the interview process being started, concluded, debriefing, making the offer, like to have somebody in place late summer.
That's great.
If everything aligns, because the first task will likely be a very heavy involvement with the development of the Waste Management Services RFP.
Nice.
We might need a consultant to help us write that RFP too. There are consultants that we've worked with in the past that do sanitation optimization, and we particularly have worked with one in the past too. So we may employ the use of a consultant to assist with that RFP, because that's a heavy lift, especially for somebody coming in, especially with the staff that has a lot. The staff has to train the new person to a point. So there's going to be a lot of moving parts. So just because we have someone in the seat doesn't mean that they're going to, they can hit the ground running to a point, but that's a very, 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 very big task.
You need a runway. Yeah.
Right. So there's going to be a lot of involvement from us as a department, stakeholders, and we're going to have to usher the person through the process too. So that's really the goal, is we need that person to come on board and bring that perspective too. And maybe they wrote an RFP like that before, or maybe they could contribute in some way, but we're very hopeful.
That's excellent. Something you said, I love the idea of working with the schools, because again, like just a handful of people, but they said during shutdown and when their kids were home, they got very vigilant about recycling, because like kids are all about it. So, maybe we just need the kids to remind their parents of recycling again. Maybe, I don't know, I think they get it. So yeah.
Totally agreed.
I think that's a cool thing to work with the schools. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on the solid waste report, recycling? Okay. Finally, food scrap drop-off report.
Okay, lastly but not least, we food scrap drop off. Coincidentally, we finished this fiscal year from the prior fiscal year, which was the first pilot program in 2021. Second year was 21-22. The tonnage was almost the same. There was an increase in the transfer station and Rowayton Community Center tonnage by a few tons, but nonetheless, the split between volume was 65% Rowayton Community Center, 35% transfer station, which was identical to the prior year. So that trend is holding. And we're looking to stand up our third location, which will be in Cranberry Park. Tentatively, no plan or area designated within the park yet. That is subject to change. But we do have our operating budget approved now July 1st, so we can move forward with that initiative. which we'll be speaking to the committee about over the next few months. And that will be the third location. We need to, operations needs to really kind of scope it out and figure out what'll work on that site and where. And again, that's also something that the new waste and recycling programs manager would be involved with.
Great. All right. Anything else?
That's it, Madam Chair.
Okay. Anything from the committee? All right, I just, make one final announcement to anyone who is watching this on YouTube or watching after. If you had wanted to join into public participation and were not able to log on, please feel free to email me and the whole committee with your comments, and we'll get them into the record. Okay. All right, so I will take a motion to adjourn. Ms. Johnson makes that motion to adjourn. Tom, I thought it would be you with your jet lag.
Yeah, no, just staring.
Okay, you need to go to bed.
Yeah.
All right, that's it. Good night, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Take care. Good night. Be safe.
Good night, everybody.
Have a good night.